Welcome to Kansas City Business Cast. This is your host, Michael Reisinger. We are in season 6. I have a very special guest today. I know him as Val. Heath Chitwood, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. And yes, right off the bat, the name game is going to be a little funny because everybody knows me. Mostly everyone knows me as Val. That's a nickname I got 20 years ago. It stuck with me. The biggest part is Brazilians cannot pronounce my first name. And in fact, if you're not American, the H-E or the T-H at the end throws everybody off. So yes, for today, please call me Val, even though in the business, industry, everyone knows me as Heath. So
dude,
that's comfortable for you.
That's incredible, Val. So yeah, I've known you as Val for, my gosh, brother, for the last, I think, 9 years. Okay. So long story short, for all of our listeners, I tell them how I bring my guests on, right? Yeah, so good. I met Val in the doorway at a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu academy about 9 years ago when I first was starting to consider Jiu Jitsu. At this time, I was almost 300 pounds of chewed bubble gum. I had every terrible health metric in the book. And I walked in there and Val, I think, was a brown belt at the time, looked me in the eye, smiled, said, "Welcome. You're a very scary looking, intimidating dude." So to get that type of warmth right off the bat, I was like, wow. Fast forward, I would not join jiu-jitsu until losing a bunch of weight and then actually gaining some back after COVID in 2021. And Val was my fundamentals professor, okay? And so Val took me through my first 6 to 8 months of jiu-jitsu. First time back in it in over 20 years. Definitely had all of the life lessons there. Something that I haven't talked about on this show before, but was my experience with jiu-jitsu. I did a lot. I bit off more than I could chew when we would roll. I would roll with training partners. I say the wrong training partner. It wasn't that they were bad people. It's just that I was trying to figure myself out. And I think them as students, they were trying to figure themselves out. So, I got some injuries. I got bursitis in my elbow. I was out for like 6 weeks. Val was my professor. Val said, "I want you to show up in your gi. I want you to bring a little booklet, journal. We'll still get some reps and we'll do some stuff." The way that Val treated me when I was injured was what kept me coming back to jiu-jitsu and what made me realize as I started to develop relationships with other practitioners, other professors, and then I'd meet people from other academies and other schools in Kansas City. And I realized, okay, I see why now this is the most popular martial art, why men and women alike and children are finding so much benefit in getting their feelings, their emotions, their aggression, all that stuff out on the mat. There's something about when you walk into a jiu-jitsu academy and you train with people who are smiling and are friendly and you're all trying to choke each other out, right? But there's that feedback loop of like, how'd you get me? How'd you get me in that choke? How'd you get me in that arm bar? Man, what am I doing wrong? And you get that perspective. It starts to permeate through every area of your life. And that's why when you hear jiu-jitsu practitioners talk about this, whether it is your 2-stripe black belt, Val, 1 stripe? One stripe black belt.
Next year.
That's amazing. And a 1-stripe white belt like me, like we're super fans of this and we get it. And so long story short, long story longer, I was away for another couple years, financial stuff. Everybody on the show that listens to this is aware of that. And literally as of 4 weeks ago, I'm back, baby. I had a phone call with my buddy Val here. That's how this episode came about. It was so good, brother, to talk to you, reconnect with you. And so, man, that's how you're here. And obviously I have already broken all the rules. I told myself this morning that I wasn't going to get so excited. I was going to keep it metered here for this conversation, but I can't help myself, dude. Like you're a high energy dude. You're such a servant leader. And so I wanted to kind of give you your flowers in your introduction there. So,
okay. So
just that, like brother.
when I get excited, I'm going to start moving around. I start talking, so I probably, and real quick, not only jiu-jitsu, but in sales, I work in sales, but I probably do too much of this, and I get excited when I'm trying to talk to people and sell people stuff. And it's only because I just enjoy what I do so much. So even when we're just here talking, it's going to be a lot of both of us. We're going to be feeding off each other here in about 2 minutes, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
And that's going to be the fun part of this podcast. So yes, thank you very much for having me on, getting you back in jiu-jitsu. I love being on your podcast, but I love seeing you in the gym more. And the reason being is because the most hilarious thing is when you text me and you're like, hey, this is Mike. And you kind of gave me your story. I'm like, dude, I remember you. Like, I remember because in the fundamentals class, we had that, you don't know the guys walking in, and we see you for such a brief period of time. And then, I'm very musically motivated. So the music that I had on, and there were you and I can't remember the Brazilian guy's name that
Wagner.
We all had to love. Yeah.
Wagner, shout out Wagner, dude. Yeah. Sepultura.
Yeah. We all had a love for Sepultura and Pantera. And then you start liking the guys. You start not liking them more, but there's that connection. So then, now it's like, okay, look, I see you stepping on the mat. You're an older guy, just like I was when I stepped on the mat. Well, I was 35, but a little different, So you're like, okay, not only do I want these guys to stay because of the benefit of jiu-jitsu, it's just you want them to stay because as a dad, you start to understand the struggles of how much you need that outlet in your life, and you really want to dive deep, and we all want to dive deep into it way too fast. So the fact that you've already shared your journey and your injuries with your listeners, that only sets them up for what they're going to try, when they start trying jiu-jitsu or even just anything in general. But
I will say too, brother, like that has been such a relief to come back to see you, to see Jesse, shout out Jesse Kopp, and to say for these first few early days, because it's more important for me to go in there, to learn, to figure some of this stuff out. Some of it has been like muscle memories. Look, Jesse's been working with me, right? He's like, okay, very good, very good. I can see you retain that move, right? But to say, yo, I am not ready to do rolls, 5 3-minute rolls or 3-minute rolls today. And to get the response of, bro, that's cool. Hey, let me see what the white belts are doing. If everybody's good, I'll drill with you. And you did that the other day, bro, 2 weeks ago. You're like, Michael, get over here, right? And so we started working on pressure and all those things. And so the thing that I would say to everyone out here, like this is the 1,000th time that you've been nagged with jiu-jitsu. You've heard on a podcast, and it's not just Joe Rogan and Sean Ryan and all these other guys, but you're hearing from these two average Joes here in Kansas City, get your ass in jiu-jitsu. Like for those of you hearing it for the 1,000th time, please stick around. This one's for you. Okay. So Val, let's talk about that. You have shared with me kind of your journey to jiu-jitsu, but my understanding is that you found it a couple decades ago in the military. Can you kind of tell us about your journey into jiu-jitsu? And then we'll just transfer into how it's helped you in life and business and kind of go from there and unpack.
So primarily when I was a bodyguard in Iraq working for the Department of State, and watching UFC one day, one of my teammates says, I used to fight MMA. What's MMA? Well, mixed martial arts. All right. Well, what do you mean by that? When I had watched UFC, I didn't know anything. So he started showing me how to do a couple arm bars. And then just from being in Iraq, you have a bunch of knuckleheads that think they know jiu-jitsu, and really they know more bro science than anything. So they think they know how to do a scissor sweep. They think they know how to do an arm bar. And then for about 4 good years, I was doing no gi in Iraq because none of us did gi at the time. So, I went probably 4 years of learning all the moves incorrectly, but I was developing a good base though. So that way, and it's funny how some things stick to you. So I was in Thailand. We were in Tiger Muay Thai. We were I don't want to say we were Thai fighting, but we were training Muay Thai. And I heard one of my buddies tell one of our Bellator friends, or one of our friends that fight in Bellator, I said, hey, no one's going to take you serious in jiu-jitsu if you're not belted. And that just stuck with me, you know? And it's weird, the things that will stick to you.
Right.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to take this gi thing seriously. I tried it for a month and absolutely hated it and put it down. I said, I'm not wearing this thing. I'm not wearing these pajamas. It's too tight.
I was thinking pajamas, bro. You know, the towel.
Yeah, it's restricting, you know, like everything. The game's so slow. Everything's
people on the street aren't going to be wearing this. All the things that you go through that, right? They ain't going to be wearing this as a street fight. Neither am I.
That's crazy. Yeah. And then when I was leaving Iraq and coming back to the States, and I had been a bodyguard for roughly 10 years in Iraq. So that was largely my identity. That's largely who I was. In a lot of ways, I was getting my roles in life mixed with my identity in life, because that's all that I was, you know? And that's a big part of military guys, where we get our role and our identities mixed together. So when I transitioned back to the States, really the only thing I had was jiu-jitsu. And I know that sounds weird, but I came back to Kansas City, where I have not lived in 10 years. Only about 3 friends. My uncle and his wife live here, and that was it. So now I had to fit into society, and jiu-jitsu was my thing. I mean, from the day that I signed up at the Brazil Academy, I was there 4 or 5 days a week. And it was just my normal, like, okay, this is what I do now. And this is what I'm going to do, because this is my outlet. And this is my new, in a way, my identity. So.
Man, brother, I love that. And now, obviously, bro, like, you know, obviously I came in later in your jiu-jitsu journey, but seeing how people react to you when you walk into a room, seeing how you support men and women of all ages, shapes, and sizes through jiu-jitsu, I have seen you key into people who need help on a full mat and find them and identify them and say, hey, can I work with you real quick? And how you will give people, you've done it for me, bro. You've said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to let go of everything that you're thinking right now. Just watch what I'm doing. Okay. You feel that pressure. You feel, nope. And then they hear, like, when, you know, you were having me practice framing, I think, and you go, you know, you're giving that feedback, but seeing you now, bro, like just such a well-connected dude, well-loved dude. I can tell when you're in there, you're there because you want to be. This is where you get a lot of passion. Where do you find the energy? Where did you figure out, like, I want to actually help people learn this and I want to pass this gift on? And then what was that sort of transformation like? And what keeps you doing it too, man?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of the part of the way I teach is from seeing people that you don't like to learn from. And in no way am I pointing that at my former instructor. I want to be very clear on that.
Absolutely.
But from my military days, from my time as a contractor in Iraq, you know, you have good instructors, you have good leaders, and you have ones that you want nothing to do with. So I have always said, you know, I always want to help out my fellow man. And I think that's one thing that men don't do enough in this world in general. We don't lift each other up. We don't help each other enough. So the fact that, now I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, which is crazy. I mean, it's just so much fun. It's so much fun to be a black belt. But about that, you know, I'm a 46-year-old black belt. You know, 26-year-old black belts can just kill me on the mat. And there's no doubt about that. So being a 46-year-old black belt, now what I want to do is I want to take every one of my students and say, hey, let's fix this real quick, because this is what you're doing wrong, because this sport is so difficult, right? It's so difficult to learn and it's easy to quit. So anytime I can see one of my guys or girls and, you know, anybody doing something wrong, I want to correct that as quickly as I possibly can. So that way they stay on the mat. The other thing with that is, you know, at 46, also when I'm saying, Michael, come here and drill with me, I'm also saying I'm 46 and 4 or 5 minute rolls every day, Monday through Friday, kill me. So brother, I mean, don't think that I'm, you know, yes, I'm doing that to help you out, but I also need that time at 46 because as soon as 7 o'clock comes around and that class ends, we're going to work. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
So
That's
for
right.
us to do 20 minutes of rolling every morning, and we have guys that, we have 35-year-olds we have a bunch of 20-year-olds in class.
Yeah.
Brother, I'm helping myself out as much as I'm helping you out in that 5 minutes. So don't
Absolutely.
get that twisted, my man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, man. So, I'm just so curious because, every black belt that I have had the honor of meeting always strikes me as, extremely disciplined, super available, present. Present is definitely one of the things that I've noticed, that these are people that, at least when I'm around them, they are not distracted. They're fully there. They are, even if they're thinking it inside, I would never know because they are so present and attentive with me. What are some of the qualities that you think, now that you've made it, you've got your first stripe on your black belt as well, second one incoming shortly, right? Like, what does it take to get to black belt and kind of keep your black belt, right? Answer that however you want, whichever road you want to take it. Like, what's been important for you, or what have you seen now that you've trained with other black belts? What are the themes there?
The biggest thing about getting the black belt, and you've heard this 1,000 times, consistency. Consistency, just show up. It's ridiculous how you hear every black belt say that, and you think it cannot be that easy. Well, it absolutely can. So it's consistency and then your repetition of doing that move that you're learning that week. I'll even say I probably don't get enough drill time in as I want to. So for those of you guys that are coming in, if you could spend 15 minutes after class going over one of those drills that you learned that week or that day, you would be surprised about how much that's going to help you. And I don't want to say I can do this just by sitting here thinking about it, but once we get to a certain black belt level, or even just to that certain level in jiu-jitsu, a lot of times you can start YouTubing something and then you can okay, I can see how I'm going to develop that into my game now. And I'm not saying you're going to pull it off right the first time you do it, but now I'm at that point where I can learn a lot visually. Right. Let me tell you about hitting black belt, because every belt you feel like you're not ready for. Now, in saying that, I've gotten 2 of my belts on the podium at Worlds, and that was at blue and purple, or excuse me, blue going to purple, purple going to brown. And I still didn't feel like I was ready for that belt, even though I just beat everybody at my level. Getting the black belt was the most difficult ever because I didn't feel ready. And now you really compare yourself to not only all the other black belts in your academy. I was kind of comparing myself to every black belt ever. And for 6 months, I struggled where I just couldn't get my groove into things. I had been teaching for roughly 3 years, but it was, now when that black belt hits you and somebody asks you a question, you almost feel like you have to have an answer. At brown belt, you can be like, at brown belt, you can pass that off. So I don't know that. Ask him that. He's got the black belt. At black belt level, you feel like you have to have an answer. And then you kind of start doubting your abilities. And what I mean by that is you're still teaching the same class to the same group of friends that you've had last month when you were a brown belt. But in a way, when that black belt hit me, I thought, well, I don't have that answer. Are my peers now looking at me different? And, and so it was very stressful for me until I got back into the routine. And now, we have an amazing group of young Brazilians in our gym that have been training for well longer than I have. They are great at every position. They have answers for everything. They are 21 years old, and they've been doing this since they were 5 and 6 and 7.
Love it, dude.
Right. So it's easy now. I might be leading a class. Why? Because I'm a very good instructor. I can easily say that.
Yep.
But there's a lot of things that when a question gets asked to me, I can look at the young Brazilians for now help and, hey, help me answer that. Help me lead that right here. Now, all right. So hold on. Let me say it like this.
Yeah.
Every successful businessman is never the smartest guy in the room. He hires people to put them in those positions. So for me, I can give an amazing class, but when I have a problem, I'm going to go to one of my professionals because they know De La Hiva better than anybody. And oh, hey, you think this old dog is doing some lapel guard? No, this old dog is not doing lapel guard.
No,
you know, if you've
me
been
neither.
in my class, I'll let you know I'm very much a one-trick pony, and that's half guard. And if you're in my half guard, I'm having a really good day. If I don't, you know what I mean? I'm having a really good day.
Yeah.
If you're getting out of my half guard, I'm going butterfly hooks, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's my progression, you know? And now I'm starting to go from, you know, my half guard to single leg X to a crab ride. Like I'm starting to slowly get, but again, you know, when you're a one stripe black belt, or once you've been doing this for a while, now you can start piecing all these things together a little bit more. And that was I got off topic. What was
No, you didn't. No, I talked about, I asked you, what does it take to get your black belt? You answered that. And then keeping your black belt, and you're beautifully stated, bro. Like, I love how there is this, and this is the tagline for my company, but it's learn more, know less, right? Like it sounds like even when you get your black belt, and maybe especially when you get your black belt, then the pressure to learn is more important than, I don't know. I couldn't speak to it. Like, and you can't really say learning is more important than knowing, but to learn, you have to admit that you don't know. So you need to learn. Right. And so, I love that humility as well. And, you know, that's what I really love too about the vibe too at TMC as well, is just that idea that there's, like you said it with business, right? Like if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? Like, you know, you're surrounded by people. If somebody doesn't know, there's somebody who does, right? And even from a white belt's perspective, like I've been impressed with white belts there as well, you know, which some academies, you know, if you walk in, you know, doing an open mat here or there or whatever, it's like the white belt is not allowed to speak, right? Like not from a teacher standpoint. And I do think that's still like, it's true. Like if you're looking for perspective, get it from your instructor, right? But like to be able to train with another white belt that's going to say, hey, armbar is grab same side wrist, right? Like, and then do the cross over the, like if you're setting up from full guard, right? But like, I've just been very impressed by just the attitude. Before we go to business, I want to talk about you as a man, as a father, as a husband. You know, what has jiu-jitsu done for you personally, for your marriage, for your relationship with your kids? How has that worked in your heart and your life? How has that shown up?
I'm going to try and keep this short because on that subject, I can go on and on a little bit. So for me, again, 35 years old, I relocated back to Kansas City. I didn't have any kids. I have been married, but that was about 10 years before. So I come to Kansas City. I meet the woman who's now my amazing wife. I get her two daughters, you know, my bonus kids with me. They were 12 and 14. And I was so excited because that was a very easy transition for me and for them pretty much, you know? So it was exciting. And then the pressure of being a good husband, you know, bonus dad, that kind of hits you. And it's not overwhelming, but when you've went from single life to 35, you're used to not having to ask or you know, it's, and I don't want to make it sound like I was very selfish, but
you can admit you were. I know I was before I had kids, bro. When I had them, bro, I was like, I still am dealing with selfishness, dog. So you can say it if you want. I don't want to pressure you to say it, but
you know, you quickly find out, hey, I'm going to Smoothie King, and then I'm gonna go. And then now that quick drink turns into a $40, and you're like, well, I got to cut my Smoothie King thing, you know, trips out. So with jiu-jitsu, the best thing about how you can relate that to, I'm going to say anything, is just the problem solving that you do on the mat, right? Right. So then when you identify that and you're starting to be like, okay, well, how do I resolve this issue with my youngest daughter, who is completely different than my oldest daughter? You know, you have to do a lot of setting there and thinking about your game plan of how you're going to talk to her about the problem that she's having. So me, again, I would sit there and be like, okay, I can't, if I'm talking to Kayla, I can't be very stern in my speech. I got to watch my speech pattern with her because it can change her reaction to me. The good thing about the big one, with the big one, it was easy. The big one you could say anything to, even if you were a little stern to, and then 10 minutes later, she's like, hi, Heath. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. So we're already past her being upset with me. Well, hey, Shay, blah, 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 blah. You want to go to Smoothie King, Well, then, it was just different. So you start to understand. And again, I'm going to put it for somebody that's been single for that time. And then you go right into that family dynamic, you have to game plan some stuff. You really have to think that out. The best part about jiu-jitsu is conflict resolution. I'll say you go in there every day, and whether it's you're comparing yourself to other black belts, now you're doubting yourself on the mat. You may have a black belt from another gym come in, and you're going to have to roll with this dude. You don't know his game. You don't know anything about him. You have all eyes on you. From now, your academy's like, oh, Val's rolling with the new black belt that just stopped in. He better not get tapped out. In my mind, I think I better not get tapped out. Why? Because these are my mats. This is my home. I got to do good in that 5 minutes. Right. So, it's jiu-jitsu has been, and my God, I hate to say this and sound like everybody. When I say it's saved my life, well, it hasn't really saved my life, but it has literally improved every aspect of my life, because when you go in and you just get choked out by your buddies, it then lets you deal with Karen at work.
Big time.
You're like
everything after.
It really does.
There is just to kind of put a footnote on what you're saying here too. I've told people at work, right? And so I have white collar gig, office job. Most folks are not really into jiu-jitsu, right? I've got a couple of people like my buddy Jay. He's a boxer, so he gets a lot of these parallels. So when I'm on site with him, we talk about the parallels. But when you spend your first thing in the morning, and you are grappling with other guys that are just trying to get you to tap, everything after that, almost everything out of it. Again, I do not want to minimize the trauma and the things that people go through, but it's that whole principle, like eating the frog, right? If you eat the frog first thing in the morning, everything after that's a reward. It's the pre-Mac principle, I think it is. It's like, if you got a task you're dreading, take that on first. And so for me too, it's like, dude, having the nervous shits in the morning before jiu-jitsu, bro, and walking in there, it's like, dude, it is a real thing. And I will just give a real life example of problem solving and just confess to people. I think this is probably, very common for a lot of people who, like me, played football in high school, did a little bit of wrestling, did some, jiu-jitsu early on and stuff. It's like, we like to be winning. We like to be on top. Fighting on my back has been one of the most panic-inducing things, and that is currently what I'm still working through. And I actually was literally working through this with Jesse on Wednesday. I said, I tweaked my neck on a move with another white belt. I'm sorry, brother, I forgot your name. I'll make sure I tag you in the notes, though, because I know everybody from the academy is going to listen to this, right? Oh, yeah. But I told Jesse, and so Jesse, he gets me in a choke. He goes, what's your focus right now? And I said, getting rid of this choke. He goes, all right, so work through the choke, right? So that now, stopping that, now what is the thing? You got to pass these hooks, right? Because he's got me in choke, whatever. And so I have totally brought that into my personal life. I have totally made it an analogy for business, for every problem, every difficult conversation I have. I go, okay, I'm on my back right now. Okay, somebody's got me in side control right now. Like, what do I do? What's the next move? What's the next move? And I know that's why I keep showing up, Val, is because I know that eventually these things then become instincts. And then it's like, I know, again, overquoted in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu martial arts, but the Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi said, once you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. Yep. And so it is so powerful, man. I love how that's helped you with problem solving. When we're talking about, to transition to, business, how have you seen it show up in business outside of like what you've already said, like conflict resolution, working through problems, but how has it helped you as a business person? And then also with Balanced Roofing KC, which we'll make sure we tag them here.
Absolutely. So I'm going to back up real quick, though.
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer that.
Do it.
So you were talking about what you're dealing with of just that nervous energy that you're dealing with again. So my brother, and I don't think I've told you this story. So let me explain what happened to me. Again, 10 years in Iraq. I've been blown up a couple times. I've been shot at, numerous times, months and months of mortars coming in. I've literally had to clean up my buddy's blood on things. It's just rough of 10 years. Seen it all, literally seen it all over there. I come back to Kansas City. I'm a white belt. I'm in jiu-jitsu, and I'm scared to go to class, brother. Do not think that you're the first guy to deal with this. And look, man, I'm actually glad to be able to say this on a podcast. When you're a bodyguard in Iraq and you and 12 guys can take over I don't want to say take over any building like for special forces, but, working with Blackwater and Triple Canopy over there, you were standing shoulder to shoulder with some of the special forces guys that are now bodyguards. And, you become pretty fearless. That ego gets so inflated. It can't fit into any Brazilian Jiu Jitsu academy. It can't, so now you're walking in and you got your little pajamas on and you got that white belt sash around yeah. And your other men are controlling you, and now other men are dominating you. So I would sit there in my apartment and say, hey, sorry about my language. But I'd say, hey, stop being a little bitch. Stop being a little bitch. Go to class. And I would wait to the absolute last minute of either you're going or you're giving up and you're going to stay home today. And listen, that little bitch that lives inside of us, man, she's got a loud voice. And sometimes when it's like, all right, I got to leave at 6:30 to get to 7:00 class, sometimes she's going, no. Let's go lift weights. Let's just go be like a convict today and just lift weights. You got to get a bigger chest. And, and you're like, yeah, I need to get a bigger chest, and then 6:30 would come and I would just be like, stop being a little bitch. And I would go to jiu-jitsu and I would be in, listen, this is the circle of trust here,
Yeah.
I would get there and sometimes I would be like, man, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here right now. I don't want to be here. And then we would get into rolling and I'm like, okay, 15 minutes and it's done. And then afterwards, well, that wasn't so bad. And I actually learned, I got that scissor sweep today. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to put your focus on. So I'm saying you and to anybody else that watches.
I need to receive it. Everybody needs to hear it, bro.
Right. Don't focus on all of that scary stuff at the academy.
Yeah.
Focus on the one thing you did right that day and start building off of it. And then that little bitch that lives inside of you, when you're like, I'm going to sign up for this tournament. Yeah, she's still going to be there. But you can be like, no. I got this today. And then you start competing and you love it. And then, you start doing this and you're hanging out with the jiu-jitsu guys more. And you realize your whole, everything's starting to move over here now.
Dude.
That confidence is building. Yeah, you're still getting beat on the mat, but you realize getting choked out by Michael's not so bad. I got to figure that out. And then you go home and you're like, all right, that guy's tapped me out 3 times the same way. How do I not get choked from him? And then
absolutely
you figure that out. And then I stop your choke, Michael. And then now the game keeps going. All right.
And then he has to level up.
Yes.
The guy who's trying to choke you because his little tricks don't work anymore on you. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So now he's doubting himself.
Yes. And now and now that pass that he did on you all the time, and now it does not work. And
That's
now
right.
you guys are having a fun little back and forth, a fun little roll. So, being nervous as a beginner is a thing. As a blue belt, it's a thing. As a fresh black belt, it's a thing. So don't worry about that.
God, I love that, dude.
I mean, it's going to happen to all of us. And look, anybody that says otherwise is an absolute liar.
Absolute liar.
I've seen it too many times on guys that come in, whether they were, I don't want to say wrestlers, because the solid wrestlers, the ones that were state champ, they'll usually pretty much stay in the academy. but you see it from just about every other men and women. You know, we just don't like the feel in there. It's a very weird sport to get into.
Absolutely. And I love the perspective of the wrestlers too. I asked a former wrestler at our academy the other day, you know, what have you been enjoying about it, or what have you been most challenged by? And he said something to the effect of, you know, that I can actually win on my back. You know, that being on my back is not a bad thing because they're so used to pinning, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of paradigm shifts that I think get broken, and I think we need that as people. And you know, you mentioned men, not enough men build each other up, and I have loved actually just this resurgence of men talking about being vulnerable more and saying, you know, hey, it's not weak to sit around a fireside with dudes at your church and talk about the struggles you're going through. It's better to get those out in the open because sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? But I love how we've seen more of that, but still, yeah, we need to do more of that. I think men often we try to operate like islands, dude, but like obviously God built us for community, and that's why when I'm with my brothers in jiu-jitsu, I feel so much better. And my wife sees it, man. Like the mornings I come home from jiu-jitsu are different than mornings I come home from the gym. Because right now I'm flip-flopping, right? I'm doing jiu-jitsu and then I'll do recovery and work out the next day. Because that is another thing for older guys. Like if you think you can just get in shape through jiu-jitsu, you're terribly mistaken. You have to do strength training. You've got to do some cardio because your body is you're going to get ragdolled. You're going to start falling apart if you don't do, you know, at least some yoga body weight exercises. But anyway, that's a tangent. I love how you went back to what I had said to get to that business component. Anything you wanted to say about business as well, like with what you've learned and brought into business with jiu-jitsu?
The best thing about jiu-jitsu and how it does in your business, I work in the construction industry. So right now I'm currently the general manager for Balance Roofing KC. I started in this industry 10 years ago as a salesman for Pyramid Roofing Company. And just to be quite honest, the entire Kansas City area, they've all worked for Pyramid at some time. It's just it's weird how they have developed the entire roofing industry in Kansas City pretty much.
Wow.
So, you know, for us in construction, you're problem solving all day. Even if you're putting on your, you know, 1,000th roof, you're problem solving all day long. Because for us at our level now, we're dealing with subcontractors, we're dealing with suppliers, you know, subcontractors that they may have a different idea how they want to install that roof for you. And you're like, no, this is the way we do it here. You know, have your suppliers that, hey, Val, we're not getting that on site. We mess up the delivery. It's going to be there this afternoon. Guys, I got guys pulling material off right now. That was supposed to be an 8 a.m. delivery, you know? And then it's just, so again, for me, and this is what I love where I'm at now, as far as being a general manager, you are problem solving all day long. I mean, you're connected to that phone, to that tablet, to that computer, figuring out today's problems. And then today's problems may go in tomorrow's problems, but most likely not, because you're going to have to resolve that day. Tomorrow is a new set of problems, which is, again, jiu-jitsu's helped me in all of this because I've just got such a good base of your mentality, the way you're thinking of things. And what I mean by that is, you know, you're going to go into every situation with, I'm never going to get this figured out, or I'm going to get this figured out. If you can point yourself into I'm going to get this figured out, you're going to be surprised about how your mental is going to be, your problem solving capabilities are going to be so much better in that aspect. You know, again, going back to my daughter's, the little one, when she has a problem, my good. And when I say little, brother, she's 22. She may still be in there on the ground, you know, yelling and kicking about a problem that she's currently having. And you're like, kid, it's not that bad. Just figure this out, you know?
Yeah.
So for us, it's just, in a way, the way I think about it as well. And this is a weird analogy. Did you watch Married with Children growing up?
I did. And I loved that show, bro.
Okay.
I don't care what anybody says, bro. Everybody's politically correct.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Al Bundy.
Nothing phased Al, you know? I mean, Al was just like, car broke down. You know what I mean? Like, nothing raised him. So
Yeah.
once you've been doing jiu-jitsu for so long, working in the construction industry, when you get that call and you're like, hey, this happened at the job site, and you're like, huh, okay. Well, I guess we're figuring that out today, and that's where the day's going. So
man,
it makes it. Now listen, hear me out though. If the dryer breaks or my washer, which I think I need to go beat it up after this, because now that's one of those things that I still don't deal with well. I can deal with my jiu-jitsu aspect. I can deal with when the washer starts breaking down. I'm like, I don't want to have to buy a new washer.
Yeah.
Can we hit it a little harder to make it work?
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely, man. No, that's good. And honestly, best comparison of life lesson to Al Bundy that I have ever heard in my life just happened on this show just now. I actually used Al Bundy as an example of why I do jiu-jitsu, because I don't want to be like Al Bundy in this regard, where I am talking about how good I was back in high school doing the 4 touchdown passes. I want to be that dad who people are still afraid of, right? Like, I want to be that one who is actually capable of defending my family. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to stay sharp. I want my wife to look at me and still be glad that she married me. You know what I'm saying? That I didn't let myself go with old age and apathy and all that. But no, you were going to say something too before I said that Al Bundy thing just now. Did you have a final point before we pivoted?
I was probably just going to ramble. I told you, brother.
I love the rambling, dude. So no, this is a big deal. Okay. And I'm going to tell my listeners why. Okay. So I have this form. Everybody's heard me talk about it. I have my guests kind of fill some stuff out. Val and I have known each other. We've talked about pretty much everything in life. So this was the thing that stood out to me that I think is so important. I asked people, like, how do you network in Kansas City? And most people, and you'll see from the show notes, that we are going to link the businesses Val's associated with today. We're going to drop TMC. We're going to drop Balanced Roofing. Val has no social media. Brother, not only do I respect that, but I especially appreciate it because you are a living example that you do not need to have social media to have an awesome social life. You do not need to participate in this and the rat race that it can become to have meaningful relationships and have people who want to be a part of the businesses that you're in, want to be a part of, your church, whatever it is. Can you tell me why you've made that conscious decision not to have social media, or why we can't find you? We do a search right now online. I've tried. Can't find you anywhere. And I so appreciate that, bro. I love it.
So when I first got into the industry, I was on LinkedIn. But I was like, I'm going to do this, So I get
the construction industry, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I start my page. I had a Facebook page as well back then. As things are going on, I never once had to update that LinkedIn page. The amazing thing is word of mouth. I started taking such great care of my customers that, they would call the office and be like, oh, hey, that Heath, he was amazing, blah, blah, blah. Well, then they would put a 5-star review on Pyramid. They would drop my name. That's the way it started working. So I never had to update that LinkedIn. Now, I stayed always connected to my buddies in Iraq and everything with Facebook. And, and man, this I'm going to give you the long answer on everything.
Do it. Drop it, bro.
I want to stay connected with my buddies in Iraq, but a lot of those guys, as you can understand, I don't want to say far right, but, right side of politics. And then some of them are conspiracy theories. And look, I know you can always press unfollow. I get it. But I noticed my timeline becoming more of guys and sometimes girls, and some of the friends that I'm with, they're Facebook advocates, or you know what I mean? And they're big on dropping their opinions and this and that and everything else, but they don't do anything else. Right? So then I started seeing where, you're just scrolling. You need that input sensory every day. You wake up, first thing you do is you grab that phone, scroll, right? So all this is going on. And then roughly around COVID, when people's mental health really started getting bad, everyone's locked in their house. Everybody's playing on their phones. People's finances are getting ruined. Their everything. I mean, the only thing COVID did was affect all of our mental health more than anything. And anybody who sees this that may have lost somebody during COVID, I'm not trying to be disrespectful on that.
Absolutely.
All right. I feel for you, but I don't believe the lockdowns were beneficial, and I'm sorry.
Nope.
Now, that's me on Facebook, dropping my opinion. Now I'm on your podcast dropping my opinion. So roughly about 2001, I started going to church a little bit, right? And I tried out this church. I tried it, and I wasn't raised.
2001 or 2021? Sorry.
2021. I'm so sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So this is after COVID. Yeah, right after COVID. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I started dropping into a couple churches. Went to my wife's church a little bit. Just didn't get a good feel for it. Went to my buddy's church over in Lee Summit. I just couldn't feel. It wasn't doing much. At the Brazil Academy, where you met me and where I was training, we have a pastor on the mat. And
pastor, literally.
Yeah, Pastor David. Yeah, Pastor David. He said, Val, come check out my church. He did ask me to come by during jiu-jitsu. They were doing jiu-jitsu at the church one time.
I remember that. I went to one of those events. Yeah, that was really cool.
Fun. It was like a little harvest group. We do a little jiu-jitsu, talk a little bit about the word. Dropped in a couple times, and then, I think I went. My wife was like, hey, let's go she'll say Christmas Mass. She's Catholic. She's like, let's go. So I walked in, and there was Pastor David's daughter, Charity, her first song, and then that voice, it just hits you, and the song hits you, and you're like, okay, I'm going to try this out, right? Okay, so then, 2001 goes into 2002, and I'm getting to social media, buddy. I'm like I said, I'm going to give you the long version.
Brother, we're all here for it, bro. We got time. Yeah.
Around 2002, my dad
2022
Bible. I got my dad's Bible. First Bible that man ever read. He gave to me, and I said, hey, I'm going to start reading this Bible beginning of 2002. So now I'm in middle of February. I had not picked it up, and that was on my goals. For also men, if you're not writing out goals for yourself every single year, we ought to talk about that. That can be a full podcast. I don't even want to go off on that, but it was part of my religious goals for the years, right? Like I set business, personal, jiu-jitsu, religious, relationship goals. Gentlemen, you should be doing that as well. Maybe even sit down with your wife and discuss those. That's another thing. So read my dad's Bible. That was number one. Like I said, I started playing around with going to church, twice a month, whatever. Now I'm going probably, at that time, I was probably trying to hit every Sunday, but I wasn't fully committed. Social media. Here's where social media comes in. One of my buddies from Iraq, I see his videos. Some days he's doing workout videos. Some days he's doing shooting videos. Some days he's talking about the word. And this time he happened to be talking about the word. And God works in mysterious. And he just does great things. And I needed to watch that video that day because he said, my buddy Mo, he said, put your phones down, pick your Bibles up, right? And this whole time, I'm 6 weeks behind of picking up my dad's Bible, right? So right then, man, that hit me. And it took me about another week and a half to fully stop all of my LinkedIn pages, everything, because I was like, I'm tired of that sensory input. I'm tired of picking up that phone all the time like a 13-year-old girl. And I picked up my Bible. And then, brother, when I say things started changing. About 2 months later, I was baptized, So I've just, since that, and now I'm 3 years into it, dude, I've just dedicated myself to the Lord and what he's done. And I don't want to be on my phone. I don't want to be on looking at people's opinions in Facebook and, I don't care that you're on LinkedIn. I don't want to network with you guys on LinkedIn. It's nothing about growing my business. It's just, I don't want to take anything away from my day that I don't have to. Yeah. I don't want to sit there and, now hear me out. I do like watching jiu-jitsu videos on YouTube. Yeah. Okay. That's being right. Said, I'm going to sit down, and one of the things I want to do this weekend is the book of Job. I'm going to be honest, man. That's a deep dive. Like that's a difficult book in the Bible.
Yeah, it is.
I've read it a couple times. I'm finishing up again today, and then I'm going to sit down and look for a good YouTube channel that will just help explain everything to me. So I use YouTube still for jiu-jitsu and a lot of religious stuff when I just want to hear it from a different perspective. So yes, I'm off social media, but me and YouTube are still there,
First off, just thank you for sharing your testimony, man. And that's something that like I just so appreciate more and more, man, as I have guests on this show. We've had so many just believers, Jesus believers on this show, and I just think it's so important, bro. And number two, I can't remember the book, but the body is a temple. Right. And so most Christians will go to, okay, so like what I eat, like I need to eat the right stuff. And it's like, yes, absolutely. And if the body is a temple, that means that it's also the thoughts. It's also what you see. It's what you take in. When you have the algorithm that is literally conditioning you. And that's why you talked about it, like my timeline, which is on Facebook. It starts to show you more of those things because it measures dwell time, it measures likes, it measures comments. It starts to get into us. And that is the battlefield right now that we face. It is the war. I believe the enemy, Satan and his legions, I believe that is the war on man. It is part of the battle plan, right? Is to tear us down through what we see, what we feed, what then feeds us, what then just starts to change us from the inside out. And as a person who made the most improvements that I've ever made in my life, taking that posture, I did it 7 years off of social media. Got off during COVID because everybody was losing their damn mind.
Yes.
And then got back on just for this podcast. And now, literally, bro, you and Jasmine, who I'm interviewing from KKFI tomorrow, you're my last two folks for season 6. And then I'm taking a break indefinitely. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to literally set some, scheduled content so that our listeners can stay fed. But I'm probably going to be taking a hiatus from social media because, brother, I have been feeling that. And now that I'm back in jits, I want to spend more time with my brothers in jiu-jitsu. And I do feel like that's another thing, man, that people, we all need to evaluate what that means for us, because there's benefits. There's also, it's just hijacking of the mind and the soul too. But, on that subject, man, just what do you think is kind of next for you? You talked about making goals, and maybe you could talk about your rationale for goal setting. But, man, where do you see yourself in the next couple of years, 3 years, man? What's kind of next for you and your family, and what's important for you right now, man? Because you've accomplished so much, bro, and you have such deep reflection. What's next for you, brother?
So that's a tough one, really. I could easily... I have my goals on that. My wife has kicked me out of the master bedroom closet, and this is the man cave closet.
I can see that Teddy Roosevelt quote in the background, the man in the arena.
Pastor David gave that to me.
Are you serious?
Yeah, Pastor David gave that to me when he got his black belt. He took me and Ninja out for dinner, took our family, us, our wives, and he gave us both those. So yeah, that was good. Yeah. You're actually looking at the bad angle of my man cave. I got this side all decorated. I got some Blackwater stuff here. These are a couple of my brothers over here. And you just get the closet door. But behind the closet door, that's where I tape my goals for the year. And it's just a reminder that every day when I go to grab a work shirt, I just look over at them and focus on what I want. And really, I try and focus on everything that you can control. Now, not to sound controlling, but, what can I really focus on? What can I put my attention into? And, I think some people will be like, oh, I'm going to make this year my year, Well, and as much as I hate when people say, well, don't you do that every year? That's like, you don't have to answer like that, but really keep your mouth shut. Don't tell everybody, and try and make every year your year but focus on what you can do. So the biggest things that I'm focusing on now is, and I haven't figured out how to do this one, but I want to figure out how to elevate all the men around me. And what I mean by that is, and I want to focus it more in jiu-jitsu and not to be all Fight Club on you, but you know, when the narrator, when he's sending out haiku poems to everybody in the Fight Club, you know,
Yeah.
I would love to be able to do that with, you know, maybe print out like quotes and post it on the walls of jiu-jitsu and just say things to each other as stupid as like, you know, Michael, be the man you want to be today. Like what, you know, when you think about putting yourself, having a higher moral code than everybody else, what does that mean to you? And then focus on that, right? So I would love to be able to try and elevate all the men around me a little bit more, just to be the role model of what it is to be a man. And our opinions about what being a man is going to be widely different, but I want you to set those examples for all the other men around you. I'm going to set my examples to all the other men around me. And that way we're both elevating everybody. Again, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I haven't, that message hasn't came to me, but things like that. At 47 next month, man, my health, you know, we can focus on our weight. We can focus on what we eat. We can focus on how many setups we're doing every day. If we want to be a better version of us, focus on, you know, when you're in the gym, focus on that attention. Set aside your gym time for yourself. Also set aside your recovery time. But I'm trying to master as many things as I can right now in my life. And really what that means is where I can put my focus, I'm putting my focus on that, whether it's my health, my jiu-jitsu. Obviously, I'm focusing on work as much as I possibly can. But if I got fired from that job tomorrow, I'm not going to let that define me. And I'm going to find a new role that I go into. Being a general manager is not my identity, right? Being a leader, being a man on the mat, you know, these are all of what I identify as. I don't want to make sure my role gets confused in life. So I try and control that. My relationship with God and what I'm doing in church, you know, I also do security at my church. So if they're like, hey, we need a guy for Sunday, if I can make it, I'm going to throw my name in that hat, even if it's I've been security last week and the week before. You know, I just want to make sure I'm fitting in everywhere I possibly can to just elevating my status in everything. Or what I say is, I just say mastering what I'm doing. So, you know, and I'm really not that deep of a guy, but these are all things that I keep in me that, you know, when I'm in the gym, man, I'm focusing on just what I'm doing in the gym. I just try and be in that. And I just try and, man, I don't want to say I try and do everything to 1,000%. No, I don't. But I just try and, I want to elevate the men around me that are in my life, because I want them to do the same, because I want their kids to become the next generation of men for this country, for their wives, for whatever. And again, you know, our opinions of what that should be are going to be a little different, but at the end, you know, we all want the same thing for our kids. And in turn, we want their kids to have a happy life and to have a good moral compass, you know, how to be the guy that will help the stranger change their tire, you know, all these things that, you know, we just need to elevate each other more. And again, I don't know how I'm going to do that. That hasn't came to me, but I'm going to figure that out. And I think I would like to maybe a few years down the road, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm in no way am I going to be a self-help coach or anything like that. And I don't plan on getting on Instagram to start doing that, you know? So it's like, I'm not going to get on social media to try and help elevate every other man, but the men around me, I'm going to make sure I try and elevate to a different level, whether that's through jitsu or whether that's at my church or whether that's BSing with the guys in the local gym and just helping them do one more rep, you know?
Well, I'll just say first off, just that's a beautiful ponderings, brother, and I will definitely be in prayer for that. And I do believe that the Lord will show you what's next and how to do that. I also want to give you your flowers again because you have absolutely helped me elevate my life. You know, being back. I mean, if you asked my wife Stephanie, you know, what impact TMC and being back with you and the boys has been like for me, she will say, bro, she will move everything for me to be able to get to jiu-jitsu because she knows how much a benefit it is for me to be there. And you have absolutely been part of that, right? Like, and what's been so encouraging too is how I've met other guys so far that this is their first time back in 2 years. They're coming back.
Yep.
And
Dennis.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, dude, absolutely. You are one of those dudes that I see as a complete inspiration and encouragement. I've so appreciated just you spending time with us. Is there anything that we missed, man, or something that you're feeling motivated now that we've had this conversation that you want to kind of sign us off with? And yeah, you can take your time doing it too, bro.
You know, we talked about work and family.
Yep.
Relationships, your relationships with the wife, right?
Go there. Yeah.
That's one thing we didn't really talk about, how as far as jiu-jitsu as well, man, you become a much better person. I know I have in jiu-jitsu. And when you relate that to your wife's, you're taking away so much time from the wife who's taking care of everything else in the house. You know, we all wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her picking all of us up. I'm speaking as the 46-year-old. I'm speaking for you. If you'll notice, the morning class is heavily fathers. No, heavy in fathers, right? Because that's the only time that we can really get away, where little mama is back at the house getting all that up and together for us, right? So
that's right. Val, Kaz, Jesse, me.
Yeah. Every one of the guys in there, they're all dads. They all have kids. This is when they can get away.
Mike brings his son.
Yeah, man. Listen, you know, the one thing I will say about jiu-jitsu is I feel, now, guys, there's going to be a lot of people like, that's not true. But I think we have stronger bonds with our families and our wives because of what we're going through on the mat. Again, the way we're able to puzzle solve, conflict resolution, all of that on the mat, it does help us in our home lives as well with the women that support us daily and help elevate us, right? So luckily, if you have a good woman in your life, like I believe probably Stephanie is to you.
Oh, you know? She's amazing, bro. 20 years we celebrated in December. 20 years of marriage. 20 years of marriage, amazing, bro.
Man. That is
awesome. She's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were saying if you got a good woman.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just weird how everything's, I mean, these women pick us up, they help elevate us, they motivate us to get in there and to still do it, you know, and that's one thing we didn't touch about. So just one thing I want to sign off with, just like, you know, it does take a team inside this house to be able to do what we do. Same thing with you and Stephanie. So guys, the last thing, man, master your home life too, whatever that means to you. Master that home life. I'll sign out, say this, men, you know, goals, write your goals down every year. Don't worry about New Year's resolutions. Always do your goals. Look into what goals matter to you, you know, religious, personal, work, jiu-jitsu, your health, the relationship you have with that woman that you share that with. Write those out. Write out what you want to focus on, whether that be more dates, or one of the things that I've had to write down was learn to listen to your wife, not hear her. Listen and understand what that little lady's trying to tell you, because most of the time you're probably trying to get through the same thing, just different ways. You want the same outcome, but you have different thoughts on how to get there. My brother, it's been a pleasure to be on your podcast. Thank you very much for letting me talk and just ramble, because that's what I love to do.
Dude, well, hey, when we figure out this break, when we come back, and if we can get this podcast back to in person and I can get the cameras set up and all that, you're more than welcome to come back every time. And I just want to tell you one thing about the social media thing is that I get this feeling just from this conversation alone. I just feel like you're a natural at this, honestly. And if you can be the guy who just guest appears on people's podcasts and they do social media for you, which I'm gonna do for you. We got so many bangers in this episode, bro. I'm gonna drop so many reels from this. I'll be your social media guy, bro, for this conversation. Then hey, that's what happens. But man, if anybody proves it's possible, it's you, bro. Like you can truly use focus and eliminate distraction, especially understanding too, like, you know, what triggers us, man. And as men, we got to make sure like we keep ourselves away from that stuff that can suck us in, man. Cause dude, we can get sucked into hobbies and addictions and all sorts of things that then take us away from being the masters of our dominion and our home life and, you know, our vertical relationship with the Lord, because that's what helps all the horizontal, right? So anyway, brother, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Everybody, we've got Val's companies. We've got TMC, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Definitely sign up for a trial, men or women, as you're listening to this. Check it out. And then also Balanced Roofing KC. We'll put their website in there if you want to get a quote or an inspection. Now you know the dude who's the general manager and who's going to be helping solve problems for your projects. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you.